everybody? We see y'all logging in. Hey,
Yeah,
Tamil. Hey, Tamil.
welcome.
What's up, Marco? Hey, Brian. I see y'all.
This is what you came for. Lightning strikes every time.
All right. Uh-oh.
No, let me see what else we got. So y'all, while everybody's coming in and logging on, we just really encourage y'all to use the chat feature.
Right.
Free questions, comments, concerns. Yeah. Feel free. Drop it all on in the chats.
Hopefully no concerns.
Hopefully no concerns.
Tonight is not the night for it.
Right. If you're concerned about how to book us virtually, drop that in the chat. Do that.
Yeah, let us know if y'all need our Cash App.
Right.
I don't think y'all know what y'all in for. Yo, peace, Dr. Harper. Good to see you.
Hey, everybody.
Yo, Professor Lyrical. What's up?
How y'all doing?
What's up? Dr. Harper, how are you?
Hi, I haven't seen you since Canada.
I know. It's been a long time.
And that awesome performance. Oh, my gosh.
Oh.
Please don't talk about that one.
I'm Dr. Levy. How we doing?
I'm good, bro. Just chilling, man. Enjoying the vibes.
Look at the check-ins.
Yes, sir.
What's up, Higher at Emcees squad? This is dope. So y'all, I just want you to know it is 6:30, and I do believe in timely kinds of things, but also know that given the virtual moment, we might need a little bit more time for people to log in. I still see people doing that. My thoughts are we won't start. We will begin before 6:40. We will begin before 6:40 for sure. Yo, I see Donovan Livingston. Dr. Livingston is in the building.
Oh, Dr. Livingston, I presume.
Yo, oh, he brought his baby.
Oh, hi, baby girl.
So cute.
Caesar, what's up? How are you?
Hey, she's real good. It's good to see y'all, family.
Oh,
Look at the babies. Peace, y'all. So glad y'all are joining us. This is wild. How about that on a Monday evening in December during the pandemic?
right.
Black Lives Matter. Like the fact that y'all are in this space with us, I'm so honored.
Yes, welcome. Also, just to let y'all know, we are recording this session. All right, so don't say nothing on here you won't on the public anywhere. Okay, FYI.
We're gonna have a good time. We'll wait a few more minutes and we will definitely get started, and folks will chime in as they chime in. And so happy to see y'all. Yo, shout out to hip hop for bringing this many people together. Damon Kikia, nice to see you. Brian, it's always good to see you. Dewan Smith, what's up, Dewan? Hey, Taylor.
Brian, hey.
Check him out. Towson University in the house. I see you.
Merlin in the house. Hey, there he is. Hey, Brian. Oh.
Where's he at? His face on there?
No, he did. His face. Yeah.
He says I am but the queen, not
I see you, bro. Yo, shout out to Nathaniel Livingston, my brother. Yo, Queens College is in the space. Shout out Dr. Toby Jenkins connecting. We got Aisha Johnson. Oh, we got the squad.
Oh, we got the squad. What? Nothing like good company on a Monday.
Okay. Wow, we got New York in the building, DC, South Carolina. What up, Dr. Toby Jenkins? Hey, Toby.
Dr. Jenkins.
Love it. All right, y'all, we're going to give it 2 more minutes. So I'm going to start at 6:35. Yo, Sakarja is in the building, Crystal.
Oh.
Future Dr. Sakarja Cunningham is in the building, y'all.
Yes.
Good evening.
Welcome.
So excited. Oh, this is going to be a good moment. Okay. I'm actually feeling calm now, Crystal. You done turn the music down. Let me settle in. I got my coffee mug full of water. And I promise y'all, just water.
There's no judgment here. Okay.
Right. So you know what? I'm in the spirit of let's just get it started, yo. We here and we gonna rock and roll. We got exactly 57 minutes together, and we're gonna try to MC this joint the best way we can. So peace, everybody. For those of you who are unaware of who I might be in your space, my name is Dr. Tony Keith Jr. I bring you greetings from Washington, D.C. I got my incredibly dope co-host, Dr. Crystal Lee Inslee, with me.
What's up, y'all?
We've got definitely a more formal introduction coming for y'all, but to just get started, I must first pay some bills. So thank you to the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanity. Thank you to the Anacostia Arts Center. I bring you all greetings right now from Southeast DC. I'm in historic Anacostia in Washington, DC, all Black space, one of the dopest Black spaces. And I'm in the Hive right now, coming to you live. I've got, she's off camera right now, but Jessica Randolph is in the space holding it down at the Hive. We also got my dope assistant, Lauren Alicia, is holding it down here at the Hive. We are all very socially distanced, and I do have a mask should there be a moment, but know that we are practicing all the right guidelines. But thank you all for the space. Jessica, thank you for the space. Thank you for the space, because my Wi-Fi in my kitchen is not the jam. And also, I like to move a lot, and I can't do that sitting in my apartment. Also, these institutions make funding possible for programs like this to be accessible to communities, right? And you all should know that's what so much of my work means. Please know that you can also write your own grants. You can also apply for things that will move your purpose forward. It is absolutely possible. So thank you to DC. This is my hometown. I'm glad y'all support my work. That's that. Now, we just gonna get to the business. Now, so normally, when Dr. Inslee and I are in a space together, we always perform together as kind of a way to open up the show, if that makes sense. We obviously can't do that now because of COVID, right? And so Dr. Inslee is in Jersey and I'm in Southeast DC, but we do have a poem that we would like to do as sort of an invocation of the muse, right? This is sort of what this whole event is about in terms of higher education and hip hop and spoken word poetry. So we're gonna play this video. Please know that I'm gonna turn on the captions. I know people hear very differently. The auto captions may not be that accurate. So if you need them, you can go to this link on your screen. You'll see it's tinyurl.com/dear -academy, right? tinyurl.com/dear-academy. So y'all sit back and let Dr. Inslee and I introduce ourselves to you. Yeah, I'm gonna take them out now.
Okay.
Lauren, what happened?
We can't hear it. Tony, we can't hear it.
Boombox for the bodegas and the track spots for the gay.
I heard some folks can't hear.
Right. It just clicked on just now. The audio did. So just put it back up.
Solid. Thank you, Dr. Inslee. I appreciate you.
Scholars who represent me.
We good, Lauren?
For those who beatbox through pen tops. For those who rock sneaks that don't flip-flop. For those who catch rhymes when the beat drops. For those who write, speak, and hip-hop. For those who publish papers on the boombox. For the bodegas and the track spots. For the galas and the barbershops. For the pavers and the sidewalks. For grandma's prayers and the scholar talk. And the scholars who talk and tell our stories about the academy. Remixing our stories about the academy. Scratching up our glories. About the academy that ain't never been for me. About the academy representing so poorly. About the academy that can't even afford me. About the academy and how they try to ignore me. About the academy and how they adore me.
So long as they think they can hoard me.
Yeah.
About the academy that trains me to destroy me. About the academy that gets so bitter when their offspring can't outscore me. About the academy that gets confused when we win at their games too. Scaling ivory towers, internalize my powers. They try to control what they fear most, but I've been on to game. I got fork tongue, I can translate your slang. Meanwhile, the academy can't even pronounce my name. I read maps on riverbanks and tree roots. I speak sunlight and stars that shoot. Nature taught me her truth. I've been groomed. I was trained in cracking codes. You wanna keep us out of academy? You better do more than lock up your doors. It's not that we need your paper. We've had a few gone before who warned us of the trappings, who wrote tales of woe, who tried to ally with forces like yours. We are brilliant before. Any building your building says it is so. You try to bury us beneath. You matriculate on our graves. Use our headstones for your cornerstone. Sacred lands you have paved. The blueprints have been laid. You've been architecting your own defeat. But we are accustomed to death. We know life's rhythm.
We always on beat.
We are familiar with the invisible. We learned how to move in silence for our survival. It was critical.
You afraid of the dark?
We got night vision. We see first in the spiritual. So we walk your halls unafraid. We've been taught your ways. We know all about the academy that markets pictures of our
Smiling colored faces.
About the academy that
Uses our successes to decorate.
About the academy, Judas, it was your fate. We knew all along, so we're not distracted when you betray. We can smell your decay. So we know all about the academy that keeps us freezing outside. But my skull is like a thermal. Hot ideas spin around up there, inferno. Don't be fooled by appearances. Check out the internal. I might walk the line, but inside I'm an insurgent. Plotting my time release like good smelling detergent. We built today for what's eternal. So
welcome to the academy. This is how we ride. Check out our disguise.
You can't see our tan line underneath this doctoral hood.
You can't hear the hip hop and English spoken so good.
Educate Me Academy, I'll hustle your school like the hood, except they won't know what hit them. Once they realize the outsiders are within them, and we strike with precision.
Got y'all vibing to our rhythm.
They are feeding the very movement they try to repress and never see it coming because we wore their costume.
We learned how to dress.
Coming meek like a lamb, so defenseless. But the hunted
is the hunter,
and the rumble
is the thunder, the lightning that makes us wonder, how will these walls withstand the storm? They've already crumbled. Dear Academy, you're in bad form. Coloring, we ain't done yet. Hey! Coloring us inside the margins, not knowing we drew the lines. We even made them blue.
We wanted to match your eyes, so keep your tears and sob stories. Keep your mediocrity, keep your trophies. Keep your false democracy, it was never for us.
We will still be standing, do not mourn for us. You cannot distinguish our ancestral ashes from the rubble, from the dust. Inhale.
Exhale.
Breathe deep this broken trust, and when the truth rises from the lies, and when the smoke clears from the skies, all that's left is us. Dear Academy, if you're reading this, it's already too late. We were born performing, we were born on the stage. We compress our words, our tongues split them on the page. Force feed you the scholarship about our pain and our rage. Dear Academy, we become the scholars your generation loves to hate and loves to admire and tries to relate. We are what is possible when words liberate. Inhale.
Exhale.
Dear Academy.
Yes.
That just don't make no sense right there. How y'all feeling? How y'all feeling? Everybody good? Everybody good? Because I know after a poem like that, I get flustered in my spirit. We all good? I'm assuming that's a yes. I forgot. I can't see what people are talking, but is everybody good?
Yes.
So, yo, that is definitely our poem, Dear Academy. But before we even get into why a poem like Dear Academy, why that's something that Crystal and I wrote together and decided to perform together, which, by the way, for context, that performance, Crystal and I were at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa in January. So what we presented you just now was a piece that was spit in Johannesburg back in January before COVID-19. It has been a long 2020. Yo, but before we even get into that purpose of that poem, I think that it's just important that we center some knowledge, right? So in this particular space, we just need everybody who's listening in. And I'm sure this is information that a lot of people probably already know. And if you don't know, that's okay. But please know in this particular moment, when we talk about hip hop tonight and in the future, we look at hip hop as being more than just rap music, y'all. Please know this. Depending on the way that you tell the history of hip hop culture, we can go all the way back to enslaved African people who already were brought to the United States and around the world in the diaspora with rhythm and drum and bass and poetry and song and music to communicate emotions about what was happening in their lives. That was already a thing. We can also talk about the history of hip hop starting in the South Bronx in New York in the early 70s, right? I believe it's 1973 is the thing, right? And so hip hop culture, y'all, is rooted in peace, love, unity, and having fun, right? It comes from young Black and brown people in the South Bronx, New York, who were sick and tired of racism and poverty and oppression, and was like, yo, we're gonna do whatever we gotta do to uplift our community, right? And so here's the thing, there are lots of things that happened between the 70s and now, right? When hip hop started, you needed a DJ, you needed somebody like what Crystal was doing for this meeting, right? You needed an MC, right? Somebody who was going to move the crowd with a microphone, right? These are your MCs, these are your rappers, right? You need somebody who's going to be breaking during the beats. When DJs created a break, folks is in there dancing, you got break dancers. And then you also got the visual artists, the street writers, right? The folks who are tagging their names in their communities, letting the world know that they're here. Graffiti is a part of hip hop. And then the other part of hip hop a lot of folks don't know about is the fifth element. It is knowledge of self. Hip hop wants people to understand who they are, know where you come from, know your language, know your values, know the things that drive who you are. Hip hop is about that discovery of self. So for us, at least for me, the work that I'm doing, y'all, is all about discovery of self and about being an MC. Those two things fit together, at least for me, within the context of hip hop culture. And for additional context, spoken word poetry and hip hop are related through the MCing element. Right? If you were to remove the lyrics, I mean, the music or the beats from a lot of rap music, you would realize they're actually written poetry, right? And people get on stage, they can spit them joints. And there are lots of folks whose pathway into even becoming rappers began as spoken word artists and poets. And we can talk about so many folks, but anyway, so that's just a bit of the history. I want to make sure that we ground hip hop in this particular context when we talk about it, so that as we mention this, I don't want anyone to think that we're only talking about rap music, especially commercialized mainstream stuff they play on the radio, which is not a discount to those artists, but there's other music in the world. Anything that you want to add, Crystal? Did I get that right?
No, just that knowledge of self. Even if you don't find yourself as an MC or any specific in these other, you're not a graffiti artist, the knowledge of self manifests through all of these elements of hip hop culture. So you find it drives you, it's kind of the core of it all, right? That manifests no matter what it is that you're doing. And that's how you know it's authentic hip hop culture. That's it.
Yes. Thank you.
For us and for your particular research and project, it's definitely grounded in MCing, right?
Yes, it is. It is. I'm a MC all day. There was we are both clearly MCs all day. There's a lot of folks who are MCs, but Crystal, you and I and many others are people who are spoken word poets, right? We embody hip hop, right? Those elements of whatever it looks like, that knowledge of self, that MCing in our work, and we're also academics, and we also are part of a squad of people who are like this. And you all will get a chance to meet some of them a little bit later on. But Crystal, do you remember why we wrote Dear Academy, or do you remember where it came from?
I recall you were in the middle of your dissertation, and some of your committee members, who shall remain nameless, were questioning the validity and the rigor of scholarship around hip hop, yes. Right? And so we know that oftentimes knowledge that is produced or created beyond the walls of academia gets discounted within the ivory tower or within the traditional school setting, right? And so Tony had he shared his Google Doc with me that had like bars, and I was like, Tony, we got to write, like, please let me tag team with you on this, because it was fire. And so I believe that's where the root of
that was absolutely the root. And so for those folks who are tuning in who may or may not be aware of this information, hip hop gets treated in a very interesting way within academic spaces, right? And so the good thing is we know that in schools and communities, right, folks love to bring hip hop into the classroom. It is like the thing. Let's mix rap music. Let's bring a Tupac lyric in with a William Shakespeare. Like, those things have been happening and they're for years, and it's so dope, and I'm really inspired and I love it. And I wish that hip hop was a part of my schooling when I was growing up. Most of us, though, who went through schools without that are now grown people. We adults, we work in higher education, we got degrees, and we're still bringing this scholarship. Like, we're bringing this into higher education, and it's tricky because higher ed is like, well, not all higher ed, but it's like, hip hop is not really academic enough because it's typically only viewed as rap music. And so, I thought I was muted. And so anyway, so when I was working on my dissertation, and I was struggling with this concept of, hearing Tony, well, hip hop is not academic enough. Spoken word poetry is not really where's the academic relevance to this? And all I kept thinking about was like, my presence in this space is the relevance, right? Yeah. The fact that I'm a spoken word poet and I'm teaching the history of hip hop, like, my presence is that. And so I've infiltrated the academy already. I'm already here. And so that's where that poem came from. It was like, oh, they think they can stop me. They think they're gonna prevent me from getting this PhD. Oh, y'all tripping. I've already infiltrated. Crystal's already in there, right? I'm already in there. There's some other people on this call that we'll get to later. We've already infiltrated. This probably sounds a little graphic, but like, we've grown up with hip hop and these things, and we now work in higher education.
Right. And there's a legacy to it. You know what I'm saying? Like in the same way that hip hop culture can be traced, those elements can be traced to struggle or creativity or cultural production from all over. So can the hip hop scholarship that we've sort of inherited, right? But it's the issue is that it's still understood in mainstream academic scholarship as a fringe sort of accessory. Rather than legitimate knowledge. And so
exactly. And y'all, what we present to you all tonight is knowledge, right? Like this, I'm presenting on research. Research is about discovery and data. So you all are gonna get free, y'all getting free knowledge. And by the way, I should also mention, please, if you are a social media person, follow the hashtag hip hop ed. If there's not one particular one that, and I'm not advocating this is the only one you follow, but I feel like those of you who are really interested in how hip hop is sort of being blended in academic spaces. Did I freeze?
No, you didn't.
Did I freeze? We're good. Okay. Yeah. Who are interested in hip hop and academic spaces? Please be sure to follow Hip Hop Ed on Instagram, on social media. Like there's lots of there are thousands of us that do this work. So I'm not an anomaly. Crystal is not an anomaly. We do this work and we're necessary. So we've infiltrated. That was the point of Dear Academy. And so in terms of other ways we've infiltrated, here are the three things, and this is for the world to know, whoever is listening in. When it comes to my PhD, y'all, these are the three things that I just kind of need the world to know. I tend to talk about all three of these things in kind of crowded, convoluted way or like confusing ways. There are three things that you all need to know, right? So when I earned my PhD last year, there are three things. One is hip hop educational leadership. I'm going to talk about all of these. I'm going to say them out loud because I like to hear myself talk. The other one is blackout poetic transcription. And then the other one is educational MCs, EdMCs. Y'all hear me talk about this a lot. It's a whole hashtag. Y'all are probably wondering how did this come about? So give y'all some background knowledge, and I'm gonna do my absolute best to not overwhelm you with academic jargon and make it boring. I love this work, so please know that I'm speaking with passion in this moment. Okay, first thing is, hip hop education leadership, y'all, is just a theory. When I was in grad school, when I was working on my PhD, I was thinking about different ways in which people demonstrate leadership. So for those people who study leadership, there's so many leadership theories out there. There's servant leadership and culturally relevantly, there's a bunch of different kinds of leadership. I was interested in a leadership that's, I don't know, sounded more like me, a little bit more, and I'm like, oh, maybe it's hip hop education leadership. And so this theory essentially is like, they're just people in the world who make educational decisions and they embody hip hop how they do it. That's kind of what it means at the most basic level. So hip hop educational leadership is a thing that I've been stewing on. I'm not the only person who's thought about this. I might be the only person who's like published like some work about it in particular ways, but just know that I'm not the only one. But this is the thing. So hip hop education leadership is one thing. Now, because we know hip hop has multiple aspects to it, right? I couldn't just be like, for my dissertation, research all hip hop education leaders. Like I couldn't do that. I was like, I want to know more specifically about people who kind of resemble me, right? Who might be spoken word artists and poets, maybe they're rappers, maybe they're MCs, but they are somehow using their spoken words to move crowds in some kind of way, whether you're teaching, you're performing, but you're using your words. And you also identify as an education leader. The reason why this is important, y'all, is especially most of my work in the DC area, particularly DC, has been in nonprofit community-based spaces. And so I was someone who worked for nonprofit organizations, after-school programs, tutoring programs, college prep programs. I was, without a doubt, am an educational leader. But when I was in graduate school, the only people they talked about were like principals and superintendents and chancellors. And I was like, well, what about the people like me? Like I do work in education too, but I just do this spoken word hip hop thing. So I needed language for that. So that's where that question came from. Now, in order for me to get an answer to that question, I needed to interview people. So this is the research. So y'all, Emcees is built on the work from last year. And so this list of 10 people I interviewed, and the picture doesn't show everybody, but I interviewed 10 people last year who were just like me, who were spoken word artists or rappers or MCs or poets. They were working in partnerships in schools, right? So they didn't work for a school. These are high schools, by the way, urban high schools around the country. They didn't work for the high school. They worked in partnerships. So they were housed in the school building, doing work with young people. And it was all centered around hip hop and spoken word in some capacity. I bolded the ones in DC because we had people from Thurgood, Theodore Roosevelt High School. We had Eastern High School. We also had Cardozo High School, shout out to Dozo. And then a couple other, but we focused specifically, like there was a big, large DC focus. So it was these people. I interviewed them. Now, In terms of interviewing them, this is another piece of information, and this is not something that I created. Was done years ago, but I was interested in doing research, interviewing these people and discovering an answer to this question using a method that would seem like hip hop. So y'all, I read like crazy and I read like crazy and I kept on reading and I read and discovered that people have been doing something called hip hopography. I'm not making this up. This is a real term that is written about that you can use. And it's just doing research in a hip hop way. It's probably the easiest way to explain it. So for me, I was inspired by, there are these elements of a DJ, right? That was written about in some of this work by this person right here, Emery Petschauer, right? That refers to sample, layer, flow, break, affect, and performance, right? And so I just want to show you all a tidbit of how I brought those elements into my research. So what I did was, after I interviewed all those people, I was like, yo, I know, because I'm a spoken word artist and a poet, I know I want to turn their stories into poems because I feel like I'll be able to understand them better, read them better, like I'll find something better. And so I wanted to do my own method. There are tons of people who turn stories into poems before, but no one has done it the way that I've done it. And so I've created something.
That to me is so hip hop. Hip hop is so innovative. It's fresh. It's always creating something new. And I love that.
Thank you. And Crystal, thank you for that because, and also I'm bigging up Crystal because for the record, y'all, she was on my dissertation committee. And I'm glad she was because I needed someone who understood that the way this Black brain works is not like a very standard academic way. I don't think linearly. I'm very circular. I'm kind of all over the place and I'm wildly creative. And I grew to love, shout out to a very dear friend and mentor, Dr. Toby Jenkins, who loves to give people blank slates. And so I love a blank slate. And I'm like, wait a minute, so I can take these poems and do what I want? Oh, hold up, okay. So the method that I developed, you all, is on this next screen. This is blackout poetic transcription. You don't need to read the text on the screen. I'm gonna share a thing that's probably a little bit more significant, but just know that on the left side, this is a chunk of an interview. This is someone I interviewed last year, talking about being from Detroit, what it was like growing up in high school, going to college. The next screen is, what I did was I took a black highlighter function on Microsoft Word, and I just took out like the I mean, the, they, that, like it as, I mean, my mama, like stuff that might identify who they were. So I didn't omit anything about their story. It was just like some parts of language. And what was left over were, of course, the exposed white spaces. And this follows traditional kind of blackout poetry. So then what you get is what's called a data poem. So y'all, this is data. This is not a beautiful poem. This just says art was never enough. I'm a poet from a Black city, Detroit, a young activist since 16, organized against white supremacist practices, right? I studied journalism. These are just structured like a poem, but that's how I got to it. Hopefully that makes sense for folks. Now, people might wonder, well, Tony, we know, where's it at? We know hip hop education leadership. We know blackout poetic transcription, but where did Emcees come from? Emcees came from this. So it just so happens that one of the data poems from the people I interviewed last year look like this, right? And this cat, I call him Donatello. He says, never called myself a rapper. I was always a poet, a distinction. Rap is literally poetry timed. I'm an MC. MCs become educators literal-wise. The literal M and C can be master craftsman, master ceremonies, Mr. Community. Community is a big part. And when I read this particular data poem, I was thinking to myself like, MCs become educators, which I've heard this before. I mean, to be clear, there are lots of people who teach about this, right? But something about the way it showed up in this research, I was like, MCs, educators, educational MCs, and like light bulbs went off. Like the whole roof flew apart. Like I got all excited and I realized like, oh, language that I can use to describe who I am when people say, Tony, what is it that you do for a living? Like, who are you? I'm like, oh, I'm an educational MC. I'm a hip hop education leader, but I specifically do spoken word poetry and blah, 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 but like that, but I'm an MC. That's what I do, right? So so you all know the context, that's where it came from. So educational MCs is just language. Y'all with me?
Yes.
All right, now, a couple other things that my data told me last year, and I'm gonna run through these relatively quickly, is after reading all of these people's stories and data, I learned some answers to a few other things that I think are really interesting. And so for those of you who might be wondering, am I an MC? Yeah, might be. And also, I'm not the authority of this. If you feel like you are, you are. Like, it's your life. Like, I don't care. It's just language. All right. So how did MCs develop? First thing is, everyone that I interviewed last year, and I might add, a lot of the people that I interviewed this year, kind of took this path towards knowledge of self. When they were young, They were discovering their identities. They were already focusing on or understanding what race is and gender and sexuality and class and like trying to just kind of figuring that stuff out. But then almost all of them at some point recognized that there were some equities in our system, especially in education. A lot of them were talking about, yo, there's racism in education. There's this, like, so they knew about inequities. They probably didn't have language to describe it, but they knew early on that something wasn't right in the world and there were inequities, right? All of them, by the time they were, high school, if not later than that, were all engaged in emceeing or writing poetry in the margins, or they were rapping, but they were already heavily involved in spoken word poetry, hip hop. All of them, for real, like all of them, by the time they were adults, had achieved significant things. I'm talking about writing, like awards, writing awards, essays. I'm talking poetry contests, poetry slam competitions, like MC battles. We got folks I interviewed this year who were like opening up for Lupe Fiasco, some like outrageous. Anyway, so people were actively achieving their goals and dreams. Then we also know that by the time Emcees really were entering like adulthood, and I use that with air quotes, once they were like working kind of practitioners, they knew that they had a purpose. They knew that leadership was the thing. They knew that they were driven to do something, to inspire somebody, to change the system, to adjust a policy, to fix social justice. But this was a bit of like their pathway last year. So the other things, MCs that I interviewed last year, and again, the same kind of things bubbled up this year, but it's super dope. All of them believe that, we need to focus on the health and wellness of students, right, across the country and around the world. But they were specifically, don't sleep. We need to talk about the health and wellness of Black and brown girls and women in education. We're talking about the students and the teachers. Let's focus on them, right? So shout out to, when we say things like George Floyd, we also talk about Breonna Taylor and Sandra Bland, et cetera. Like, let's just talk about the fact that health and wellness of Black and brown women matter too. Second thing is they were talking about, they knew this. And again, this is not new. Hip hop is a philosophy. It's a spirit. It's a consciousness. It's more than rap music. It's like this culture. Like there's more to it, right? Hip hop is an accessible educational opportunity. Y'all, hip hop has been around, again, depending on how we tell this history. Let's just give it 50 years is like global popular culture ish. I'm 40, which means I don't know a world without hip hop. Right, which means it's accessible to me because it's culturally relevant. Like it's a part of my culture. It's a part of every person. Like it's a part of culture. It's a part of the Super Bowl. It's everywhere, right? And so it's a part of. It's accessible, right? The other thing is they believe that educators are MCs, which links to that poem I showed you all before. You got to master conditions in your school or of your classroom, right? You got to master those conditions. And last thing is, this is really great because this is also something that bubbled up later this year. Is that spoken words. The rhythmic spoken words, they have vibrational energies. There was this belief that, when I speak to people or when I speak to an audience, there's sonic waves or vibrations or whatever that reverberate out of my mouth and they land on people and they can affect people. And so when you speak positive, when you speak affirmations, think about what that does to somebody. And when you speak hate and harm, think about what that does to somebody, right? And so those were just the beliefs of NMCs. And then I'm going to get to the last little bit is, this is what they did last year. There were 4 major practices. The NMCs I interviewed all managed hip hop inspired spaces inside of school buildings, meaning they ran recording studios after school, meaning they transformed the lunchroom into like hip hop festivals, or they was running open mics in their classrooms, but they were managing spaces inside of school that were themed for hip hop. And that's also something that bubbled up in this year's research too. They also coach students to pursue their passions and dreams. NMCs and probably hip hop education leaders broadly, I would argue it, don't get me wrong, academics matter, but like they were more interested in like helping these kids pursue their passions and dreams. What are the things that you love? What drives you? That's what they were focused on.
It was about purpose.
Yes.
At least as much as academic success.
Exactly, Crystal.
Success
yes. So
was purpose. Yeah.
Yes, they provide, thank you for that. Yeah, they provide that balance of social emotional learning and academic, like they're the social emotional support that all schools need. And if we think about the context of COVID-19, there's still opportunities to do virtual stuff. Anyway, the last thing is they navigated school conditions, and I say with agency and authenticity, but I will break that down. They moved through these schools how they move through their communities. Speak how they speak, dress how they dress. Like when I go into schools, honestly, any educational meeting, I look like this all the time. It's a way of like embodying being authentic to who you are and bringing that into your role as a leader in education with this hip hop. So those are the practices, right? So last but not least, and I'm gonna frame it up, this will get you all to where we're at now. Last year, a part of the performance was this, which brings up is last year, shout out to DC Commission of the Arts and Humanities and Humanities DC, funded last year, I defended my dissertation to the community of DC before I did so formally in the academy. And so shout out to Bus Boys and Poets. Y'all see on the screen, this is my family was there. There were principals, there were community members, there were pastors, there were children, but the goal was to make the knowledge accessible. A few days later, I defended it in the academy and I didn't care because I was like, I've already done. I've
right,
already
it's already been validated by the people that matter most to you, and I think that's something else that is so connected to hip hop culture and praxis, right? Is that if it does not feed the community that birthed you, then what's the point?
Yes.
Accountability, right? To the people that raised you, to the people that you interviewed, that were your sources, your data sources, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly it. Thank you for that, Doctor. Yeah, it was just super important for me that the information was accessible. And so what you all are getting today is an evolution of that. I've done more research because I'm a nerd and I can't help it, y'all. I can't help it. I cannot help but to engage in more scholarly work. And no, I do not work for any formal institution. I work for myself. I work for y'all. And so this knowledge is accessible. So I had another question, y'all. More questions, of course. I was like, well, now that I've interviewed Emcees who work in like the K-12 space, I personally know people who are Emcees who work in higher education. Now, they might not call themselves Emcees, but I know people who are spoken word artists, poets, rappers, MCs who work in colleges and universities around the country. Right. And so that's what this is about today, y'all. I just want to share some preliminary findings from that research because it builds on what was discovered before. So I'm going to
So let's just check in.
Thank you.
Everybody clear? Are there any particular questions on what Tony has shared thus far? This was like the flashback to say, here's how it all began, right? Here's how Tony got to the point he's at now. Here's where it started. Here's where we are. Is everybody good? Are there any questions about what's been covered thus far in class?
Thank you, Doctor.
We good? I think they're with it, Tony. I can't wait for you to read the chat later on. I can't wait.
Okay, because I can't even see the chat. All I can see for real, because I think it's easier and less stressful and less scary. All I can see is my shared screen. Like I just can't.
Yeah, you focus. But I think we're good. I think everybody's on. Yeah, everybody's saying we're with you. I think we're good. Yep.
Hey, awesome sauce. All right, so we gonna hit up higher ed MCs. Oh, y'all done got me hyped now. I done got the affirmation from the crowd. All sucks. Here we go.
Yeah.
All right, so higher ed MCs is here, y'all. So here's the squad. I didn't get a chance to put together like bios and screenshots of these people, but I want to do a roll call, and I believe some of these people are here. So if you are here, I need you to unmute yourself when your name is called, and I don't care. You can shout out your mama, whatever your thing is, shout out your institution, but I just didn't know if you're here. So we got Dr. Michael Dando, who's an assistant professor of English at St. Cloud State University. Sorry, Dando, we love you. And I know this sister's here. We got Dr. Tandy Hicks Harper.
Hey everybody, what's up? I'm actually in Maryland, but DMV is cool.
Oh, DMV, my bad, because I knew you were affiliated with Howard, and so I just put
DC
DC on there.
Good. It doesn't even matter.
You good? What's up, sisters? Good to see you. Hey, by the way, y'all, I get starstruck. Just so you know, Dr. Harper did her dissertation in the 90s, and she interviewed people like Salt and Pepper, right? Like Africa Bambaataa. Like I just want to be clear, this is hip hop education history on this call. We also got Dr. Toby Jenkins, who I've already talked up, who's associate professor of higher ed at USC. What up, Toby?
Hey family. Yes, South Carolina.
Yes. We got Dr. Ian Levy on the call, representing New York, Manhattan College. You on here?
What up? Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, glad you're here. We also got a doctor. And by the way, you all, there was no requirement that people had PhDs or doctoral degrees. It just kind of happened that way. I just want to preface that. There was no requirement. But when you work in academia, I think at some point that just kind of happens for some people. We also got, I don't know if you see it, Dr. Carl Moore, Assistant Chief Academic Officer of UDC. Shout out to my home institution. Carl, you here?
I think he's not here.
Okay, no problem. Nalia, Dr. Kaya's not here. She's at Montgomery College. She's an associate professor of sociology. She also teaches at University of Maryland a spoken word poetry class that I helped create. I know this brother's here. We got Dr. Donovan Livingston, the assistant dean of things at Wake Forest University. We up, brother?
Yo, what's good, family? It's your boy, Donovan Livingston, aka D Live. I'm really grateful to be here. I keep a copy of Open Mic with me like everywhere I go, yo. So the fact that I'm like on the call with everybody and looking at the names, I've cited y'all no less than 1,000 times. I just got my PhD like 2 days ago. So
yes,
I'm super excited. Like,
yes,
Congrats.
You know,
Yeah.
you die.
to
And
know
also,
the is this large.
yeah. I'm gonna shout this guy out because he probably doesn't need all this smoke, but I just want to celebrate it. If you are able to Google a poem called "Lift Off," this brother has millions of views on YouTube. He did a performance of a poem at Harvard graduate commencement ceremony. So this brother is a higher ed MC. We also got it's Alex. You want to call Alex Valientes? You here, bro? No worries. But he was working at Latino Student Affairs at University of Connecticut. Is Dr. Okello in the building? UNC? Don't worry about it. And I believe she's here. Alexa, Patrick, you here? She's not. Anyway, well, she's a lecturer at University of DC. She's a poetry slam coach at American University here in DC and GW. Professor Lyrical, Dr. Floyd, you here?
It's
What's
good.
happening?
Yes, sir.
What's happening?
How you doing?
I'm fantastic. Y'all got to hear this cat rhyme. And also, for the record, when I was interviewing people, they were just telling me these outrageous stories. This guy told me a story about being in a studio with Dame Dash and Jay-Z, which I'm not going to bring to y'all, but like the people who are on this call right now, y'all are like legends. It's so dope. And last but not least, the legends of all legends, right? Who probably needs no more introduction, but like this is just my homie from homie, Dr. Inslee from John Jay, or representing John Jay. So this was the squad this year, y'all. So I spent the month of October and parts of November interviewing each of these individuals for about an hour and change, give or take, transcribing all their interviews, doing all that blackout poetic transcription. The folks that are on the call right now, or this zoomed in, please know that I interviewed 12. I was only able to really get through like 6 people's transcripts like fully. So just know that these are preliminary findings of a thing. Right, so just so you know, so please don't be stressed out. So the way this is going to work, everybody who's tuning in is everyone who I've invited, or everyone who's a part of the Higher Ed Emcees squad, I'm going to invite you. This is like your moment, right? So I'm going to highlight a question that came from the research. I'm going to show you all some data poems that I've discovered that relate to that question. And I'm going to show y'all a couple of words. And I just want y'all to just chat. Just tell me what you think. There's no requirement. People who are not a part of the Higher Ed MC squad formally, please know you still a part of the family. So in the chat, if there's something that bubbles up for you, just put that in there, because I'm just kind of curious. All right. So we're gonna try to rock and roll this. I'm gonna try to do this in 20 minutes. We're gonna try.
We got it.
Okay. All right. First question I had was, how in the world do these amazing people just embody hip hop and spoken word poetry in their work? But how do they embody hip hop in their work right now? What do these people do? Okay. Here are on the screen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different data poems, right? And these are all pseudonyms for people that I just kind of pulled out of my hat because I kind of forgot to ask them who they are. I'm going to read these, so it's okay, but they're also on the screen in big writing. Hopefully you can read them yourselves. But there's something from someone I'm calling Lena that says, I recorded a CD, started gigging, got hungry. I'm at all the open mics. I'm learning lessons back to back to be powerful. Here's the cost. Here's what it's going to take. Even when your feelings get hurt, can you take it? Can you endure for the sake of the one little girl in the audience that's going to hug you crying? Because that might be all you ever get. Might not get standing ovations, might get run out of town, right? And I should also preface this with my approach to this research is that experiences from people's past influence who they are in the present. And so I just want to share that when I'm thinking about hip hop practices, a lot of them are rooted in what happened when people were younger, right? Or whatever. Like, so anyway, so these particular stories are not what they're doing like right in this particular moment. They've been a part of the development. I just want to share that. Nikki says, this is real simple. At my peak, 6 jobs at once. This is important. A caseworker, a teaching artist at a university, right? So just keep that 6 jobs at once thing in mind. Cornell says synchronicity connects to flow, being in a flow state, operating and performing at a higher level. Like when you go unconscious, when we freestyle and flow, you look at something else and then that leads you to something else and that leads you to something else. There's something about flow and freestyle. Next thing, Martin says, I knew in 6th grade I had the gift of gab. I knew I could talk to whomever, whenever, about whatever, knowing I have this basic ability to freestyle, ... And last but not least, my homie Tyrone says, I bring all the energy. I'm live. I owe a lot of those early musings to moments where we would just go back and forth, seeing what works and seeing what didn't, right? So as I was looking at these poems, and y'all see I've highlighted some of the blue ones, Higher Ed MCs, and these are just some of the words that have bubbled up for me. Like if I were to try to answer this question about higher ed MCs, practices in higher education. These are the words that are coming from some of your stories. And this is not all, but I'm just curious about your feedback. So there are things in there like, yo, remix. We freestyle, we sample. There's this notion of like, yo, we hungry, right? Like somebody was talking about working 6 jobs and doing all these gigs. Can you take it? Like endurance. Someone was talking about gift of gab, and also this notion of like being like finesse with words. People talking about you got to be adaptable and flexible. You still got to MC, you got to be in flow. And then there's some folks who, without a doubt, were talking about sourcing parts of their faith and spirituality. I didn't put those poems up there yet, just because I want to be sensitive about how I do that. But I'm just curious, y'all, what do you think? What's anything? Say anything? I don't care. Go for it. I'm gonna shut up now. Any reactions? Does it resonate? Does it make sense? Like, do any things that jump out? What jumps out, Toby? I see you nodding your anything what jumps out? I know you study this. Yeah, what jumps
Don't
out?
call on me. Like, so I'm writing a book on the hip hop mindset right now.
Yeah.
So yeah. So a lot of this is affirmation to a lot of the things that I've been seeing, like the themes that came out of the research I did. And I am feeling a little bit better because you and I were interviewing folks for both of our projects at the same time. Yep. And I was just like, how the hell did he get through all of his transcriptions? So hearing that you have it.
Because so
it's making me feel better about myself because I'm still transcribing myself.
I got the endurance. I was about that life. But the difference is though, I'm also not teaching and doing other things like y'all are. Like this is my full-time work, you know what I mean? But yeah.
But yeah, no. So definitely like the remixing, hunger is an actual section, in my book. The everything you're saying, the swag, dopeness, the being innovative and creative, that's a part of the hip hop mindset, and just this like hustle and grind that we're always trying to be put on. We will always want to get on, and that you're sourcing for the next opportunity. You know what I'm saying? That even when you meet that mark, is on to the next. You're always pushing yourself to outperform yourself. Yeah, so I see all of this. I agree with all of it.
I love this. I think what's so dope is, Toby, thank you for thinking about, adding in this notion of hip hop mindfulness. By the way, y'all, Dr. Jenkins is dope. What it's making me think about is, as you were talking, I was like, I would love to see a set of professional educational standards with words like these in it, which sounds outrageous, right? It's revolutionary, but I'm like, yo, I would love, I'm sorry. Right. I'm sorry, y'all,
So if we think about like, what might that look like, right? Like being assessed professionally. Imagine your annual evaluation with words like, where's the swag? What's the finesse? How do they finesse this faculty position or whatever, right? And I see Taylor in the chat also talking about like, am I an MC, right? Do you fit these qualities? Do you find these qualifications in your day-to-day life? And I think it's also affirmation between Tony's project and Toby's.
Yes.
That there's unpredicted or unanticipated overlap or echoing, right? Like I have this thing I'm working on, the poetic echo, right? And so it's like what Tony's sending out and Toby's affirming it, like, actually, let me validate that for you because I got something similar, right?
Yep. And the beauty of that is there's a production of scholarship. That sister just said, I'm producing a book. Right? You know what I mean? So it's not even just like this is a thought or an idea. This comes from rigorous work and then a production of scholarship. And so again, y'all, hip hop, you can produce scholarship in this way. So shout out to that. All right, anybody else on this particular one? I think and again, there's more stories to go to, but I think that there's something about, again, I keep envisioning like it would be so amazing to just see us, because I study education leadership and I always see these standards of practice. And I'm like, I just want words in there that just resonate with me. I would love if like, you got to be able to freestyle. Like and not like freestyle like as a rapper, you know what I mean? But you got to be able to.
Some of us might not survive the freestyle assessment, okay?
let me reword that. So not because by the way, y'all, I'm hip hop all day, but I'm not a rapper. I cannot freestyle. Don't ask me. It's never a thing. I will write a poem and read it and memorize it in a heartbeat, but I will not, right? But freestyle to me means, okay, I don't have this particular thing. How can I make it? Like, how can I, you know what I mean? Like, how can I on the cuff just do this thing, right? Like, that's what freestyle for me is like. It's COVID-19. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Let me just freestyle. You know what I mean?
And Jordan just posted in the chat. He said, "I can't wait to hear someone ask, what did you remix this year?" I love it, because to me, that's what Blackout Poetic Transcription, that's what we're all doing all the time, right? We're remixing the original, right? What we've inherited in this hip hop legacy. If hip hop has been around the entire time we've been alive, imagine what are we doing with our inheritance? How are we remixing that, right? Like, what are we doing with that? I love that, Jordan.
Ooh, that's good stuff. I felt that in my spirit right there. That's good.
Right.
That's good. So shout out to the remix. All right, cool. So that's like this first little thingamajig. Second question, unless there are other little things to move on. Second question was, what is like a hip hop centered academic philosophy in higher education? Which sounds like real highbrow, but and I'm not saying that these kinds of things again don't exist, because there are lots of people who study hip hop studies. Like there's some stuff exists, but I don't necessarily know if there's like concrete language anywhere. Anyway, I don't know. So I've been curious, like, what is a philosophy of academia about hip hop, right? So here's what came up. And I only took 3 this time because I just felt like they were so kind of compelling. I just felt like 3. So Nikki was like, the way I approach academia, am I learning something? Am I doing the work justice? Am I doing this lesson justice? She goes, she says, in academia, I'm a remix. I'm going to flip it. We are told within writing that we're supposed to sound a certain way, that our vocabulary is supposed to be a certain way, that we have to think like this, that it has to be this format, and it doesn't. If you lean into your voice, you can get free. That is when you have the most to say, when it feels the best to write, right? Martin says, my intelligence is not linked to the fact that I say super dope. How I dress has nothing to do with the right language. Norms are just agreed upon principles. They're not gravity. They're not cemented. Hip hop doesn't care what norms are. Don't care what you think, what you doing. Whole point of hip hop is I'm going to say it to your face and I don't give a F. That's hip hop in me. Tyrone says, part of our goal is to make people feel like the university is willing to leverage our resources to solve community issues, funding artist projects, or providing university resources for entrepreneurial endeavors to solve a social issue. So when I think about philosophies, these are some of the words that bubbled up from some more of the data poems, and they're just kind of up on the screen. Of course, what bubbled up was knowledge of self. A lot of people talked about this 5th element, but people were talking about a philosophy of hip hop and like as this, like justice, as freedom. Of course, it's fun. This notion of like, yo, IDGEF, I can't cuss on the camera. People were talking about a philosophy as like a shared responsibility. They were also talking about spiritual truths, right? Like, yo, like divine knowledge, right? Whatever that might mean for people, right? People were talking about hip hop as a philosophy or some way to like solve community issues. Like, can we use this as a philosophy to solve something? Also, a very clear, like, language around disrupting white educational spaces that came out directly from some data poems. And the last one was like being able to equip people with language. And so when I think about philosophy, I know for sure when I was chatting with Dr. Tandy, where you at? I know you had mentioned that these words link to philosophy in some sort of way, so I might tag team you in this moment if you got something to say. What are you thinking?
You gotta
everybody just take a read.
Unmute Dr. Hopper. There it is.
I'm just thinking that all of it makes sense. And, really, all of it really makes sense. And I just want to reiterate the fact that what you're doing here is you are creating our own language. You are creating new paradigms for academic spaces. You are creating, we could come up with a whole new dictionary, a whole new way to evaluate not only hip hop programs, but to evaluate pedagogies, so this all relates to the philosophical way of looking at everything. I love spiritual truths because we're not talking about religiosity, we're talking about spirit. Yes. And the presence of spirit when you talk about knowledge of self. So all of these make sense to me. And I'm just loving how we are just whiting out, if you will, but blacking out according to what you're doing, but whiting out, blacking out, whatever you want to call it, what's happening in these traditional spaces right now. And I'm glad to be alive to see this happening.
What? And y'all, shout out to the Knights of Affirmation. And affirmation is linked to the second question, but I'm just curious, other Emcees or anybody else in the chat, thoughts?
Yeah, I can jump in.
Yeah.
I would link it back to actually the previous comments too by Toby. I heard her when she was talking about, sort of the hip hop mindset. And I look at it from sort of a student perspective as well. Like we're talking a lot about how to evaluate faculty. My role, by the way, at the University of District of Columbia, I direct faculty development for our community college, and I'm an associate professor of mathematics. I teach for the main campus and the community college. That's my office actually behind me right there, which you can see is very hip hopped out. My dissertation is the big poster on the wall there with Big Daddy Kane and Rakim and Lauryn Hill and Queen Latifah. Those are my AKAs for the people in my dissertation I did in 2016. But even though I've been teaching and rapping, I've been obviously like rapping almost my whole life, and teaching, a big part of it. Now in this space of faculty development and helping improve faculty with their pedagogy in the classroom, I often look, what about how does my work still affect the student, which I think it can affect it even more. And I look at this mindset question. I speak about that quite often. We spend so much time talking about, and rightfully so, Carol Dweck and so forth, and growth mindsets. And hip hop embraces that. And so when we're looking to the kinds of students that we want to choose, you need look no further than students who are from and part of and participants in hip hop culture, who by definition have that grit, that elusive grit question they're always talking about. Like, what is grit? Well, look at somebody, who we just defined in hip hop circles, having been an MC who's lost monumental MC battles in front of major audiences and having the grit and determination to keep going on, being booed off the stage in my early career and having, like P. Diddy tell me, yo, son, you did okay. You just need to keep on with it. You know what I mean? And just being like, yeah, thanks for hearing me. And I got booed because of my attitude, not because of my ability, which really was a
attitude.
Attitude, right? And so just thinking you're all that and that you don't have anything to learn, and therefore by not embracing that growth mentality, right? Just thinking I already know everything, which is borderline for a lot of MCs. Speaking from the MC element, it's borderline that bravado or that false bravado sometimes that we have to have, and that that IDGAF kind of mindset, right? Which you got to temper that with, okay, am I a know-it-all? Do I have room to grow? Can I humble myself? And when we look at students who have experienced this, who especially by the time they're adults in higher education, the kinds of students that we're selecting is often the easy job. It's like, you look to the Harvards of the world who are just selecting the students who have already demonstrated, massive achievement. How hard is it to move them to a place of excellence when they're pretty much already there? So when I was at Northeastern before this, where I did my dissertation when I was teaching there as an assistant professor, I was in a program called Foundation. I don't want to take up all the time, but I think this is important.
Yeah, I must say we only got a few moments, but yeah.
Last thing I'll say is I was in this program that basically took 80 students a year and put them into the university, accepted them into the university by a group of different metrics. And what I had found out from sort of abstracting and gleaning the data, being the math guy, from all of our, our input scenarios in terms of like, what are we looking for in a student? Ultimately, what we found when you analyze the data is you could kind of put it in a little 2x2 matrix of skills and habits. And it isn't, you could just qualify each one as high or low. And, counterintuitively, you'd say, high skill, high habits make the best student. It absolutely does not. What makes the best student in every single case were low skills and high habits, meaning the willingness to persist and push forward, even when you don't necessarily have the goods already. Those students outperformed every time that high habit, high skill. So I look at it similarly to Toby. I'm sorry, I'm not saying everybody's name correctly and acknowledging who else said that, but the same points. But everything you have on this slide is true. But when we look at it from a student perspective, this should be informing how we accept these students into our institution and ultimately, how we help them persist.
Oh, that's an interesting, I could see that that's a very interesting idea there. I hadn't really thought about this, looking at this data and putting a student-centered lens on it. So thank you for that. I think that there's something to that. Thank you for that. I will absorb that. I think that there's something really helpful there. Thank you for that. Shout out to that. All right, we'll get to the very last question. I want to be mindful of time. I know we're actually on time, but I'm just still whatever. So last thing is, what kind of educational conditions, right? Like, what are the learning and engagement conditions? People like us, what do we make possible during this moment right now? Like in this moment of COVID-19, where people are learning virtually and not everybody's having a great time, right? Me and Crystal were talking about this was a wretched year. We're just ready to get get this over with. But what do we make possible? And I was really inspired by some of the data points that came out of this. So here's a few. I'm gonna go through them relatively quickly. Jerry was saying, during COVID-19, right, looking at a growth of counselors, their cultural competence, how are they developing as practitioners, training them to do this work now, because they're going to go work directly with youth in the school, trying to create an infrastructure at a college where I can both virtually and in person make it possible. Our ability to think about how to support students' holistic development. And I see words in there like cultural competence and developing counselors to be culturally competent and looking at students' holistic development. I think there's something, anyway. Cornell says, hip hop can make possible the appreciation we have for the ingenuity that comes out of necessity, right? That's the spirit of hip hop. It's bold in education. It could be empowering through a collective cipher or the valuing of accountability. Hip hop holds you accountable. It was born out of oppression, and what can rise from the ashes? Hip hop can lean into the strength we have as hip hoppers trying to promote innovation. Tyrone says, I didn't highlight anything blue, but I'm sure there's something there that got me excited. Tyrone says, hip hop, the value of collaboration, like how an artist works with a producer, the system, the institution. You also need an assist from someone, bringing your skills together in a meaningful way to create a beautiful product, which are kids who are achieving educational opportunity that they might not have had access to otherwise. Nikki says there's possibility for collaboration. That's probably what it was. I think I know this collaboration twice. We've been limited to physical space. There's a willingness, at least now, to share, a willingness to profess, a willingness to bear witness. There's a lot of opportunity to grow and expand. We've been distracted. And so when words bubbled up from what, I was asking people about what they think could be possible, words that bubbled up were around like health and wellness and holistic development. Folks were talking about this moment is kind of like a cipher, right? You're going to show up, what you going to do in this moment? You know what I mean? Like, this is a cipher, what you bring in. Like, so we've created like a cipher in education right now. And all these hip hop folks are like, well, I got this, right? But also within that, there was this notion of like, just being able to, in this moment, set aside imposed standards. Like maybe we could just get out of speak this way, write this way, wear this uniform, like maybe there's a way, take this standardized assessment. There are moments now, I think, anyway, there's that accountability, affirmations. Y'all, this call is an example of what that means. Throughout the data, there were lots of moments where people were talking about being affirmed in this moment. Y'all, everybody who's on this call, if anything, is an affirmation, certainly for me, but this is certainly a moment where lots of people are coming together and affirming ourselves. Me and Dr. Jenkins just affirmed, we've discovered similar things. We echoing out here. You know what I mean? Like, anyway, there's also this notion of vibrations and energies still, like in this moment, we can still speak positive things that land in good, healthy ways. There's also still moments to continue to write and perform and to develop counselors, at least cultural competence, but certainly like teachers. And I would make the argument that that cultural competence is not so much like, do you know African-American culture? But it's like, do you know hip hop culture? That's what I think about. I'm like, could hip hop culture be a culturally competent thing? I don't know. So that's the last question, last little set of words, and I'm just going to shut my mouth. What y'all thinking?
I think the thing that I think stands out to me from this particular season that we are all in right now is it's not only the new types of collaboration we have to do, because I think about you and I, Tony, like we're so used to booking gigs live and performing together, and we've had to evolve that into a virtual space and make it work and make it hot fire and make it be what it is, right? And it's a challenge, but it's also that that sort of that's when we tap into that hip hop. Well, I got it. Can you do it? Because I can do it. I can do it better. We can make it even better. But I also think about this moment of reflection.
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, that internal reflection. Like we're concerned about the health and wellness, of course, of our students, of our colleagues, of our other scholars. But I mean, what about who are you? How's your internal health? Like, how are you reflecting on where you are in this moment when you are isolated? Are you? What's your reaction? What's your vibration to yourself? Like, how are you caring for yourself? Those internal conditions. We're back to that. We're back to that. And I think it's been imposed on us, like I said, during this particular season. So how are you creating community And it's in spaces like this.
Ooh, Dr. E, you just helped me really quickly. By the way, y'all, lately I've been talking a lot about internal and external conditions, and I didn't even think about this, but it's interesting because this particular question is making me think so much about literally, maybe there's a way, and this is for y'all, don't worry about this, is a thing going on my brain, but like maybe I can tease some of these out to like, yo, this is what it's making possible for external conditions. This is what's being made possible for internal conditions. Like maybe there's a way to like tease some more of that data out that way. And again, there's still 6 more interviews to go through. So this is just like half of the stuff.
And what's being required, what do we have to develop in this season? Ian, you've been real quiet, Dr. Ian. Do you want to say something?
I'm just soaking it all in right now.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm literally like, I love it. You know, I think the cultural competence and counselors guy was me, but we'll see. Maybe it was Gary. But yeah, you know what I mean? Like I'm all about it. And I love this question about like, I'll say one thing, I guess, since I turned my mic on.
You should. I think it's important. I'm glad you should share what you do. I think you should. Say that. You should share. In this moment, people on this call need to know specifically what you're doing. Yes.
Yeah. So I'll be quick. So I was a school counselor for 5 years, and I built a studio in my school counseling office, and I used a bunch of different mechanisms to support youth in accessing hip hop as a form of healing and self-actualization, right? So like writing emotionally themed mixtapes, designing album artwork, starting like different types of school initiatives, like the whole nine, but out of this like studio space within the school. And then I decided that I wanted to go and actually try to become a professor of school counseling because I felt like what I was doing was dope and I was excited about it, but I didn't feel like I was having enough impact. Like I felt like I was having impact on like 30 youth around me or whatever it was, but not like all school counselors who go to school, right? And so
right.
I want to do that. And so now I'm actually directing the school counseling program at Manhattan College where I'm training school counselors, which is super dope. Thank you. But like I'm now trying to train school counselors to go into schools and utilize hip hop based interventions. So trying to see how we can get like, you know what I mean? Like hundreds of school counselors across the country doing this work. And so that's kind of where I'm at, but it makes me think of like, what does it mean to be culturally competent in regards to hip hop? And I've been thinking a lot about that because I've been writing about that, right? I've been thinking a lot about like real, recognize real. And I think that's what it comes down to. Like, I really don't, I'm like weirdly positioned because I'm an MC and like I love hip hop and I feel like I understand it from a craft level, but I don't think that's necessary to lead the work with youth. Like, and I'm really like sifting through that because for a while I thought like, yo, if you can't spit or if you can't at least like try to or understand it, then you can't rock. And I don't actually think that that's true anymore. I think that what it actually just requires is just to be you, regardless of what that is, and allow youth to be them, regardless of what that is, and then magic can happen. So how do we work on people to just be authentic? Because that's, to me, that's what hip hop has done.
Yes.
Do more than anything else. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter if you're like, if you have no knowledge at all, as long as you own that and show up and you're ready to learn and ready to rock, and then like the community accepts you. That's how I was accepted into the community because I didn't really know anything about hip hop when I first showed up, but I showed up and I was just like attentive and like eager to learn. And I feel like that was enough, you know, and as like an entry point. And so I don't know, I've been thinking a lot about that because I'm training a lot of like school counseling. It's like mostly white women are like the candidates in school counseling degrees. So if I take the position that like you gotta be connected to hip hop or you can't do this work, am I really positioned to support people in working with young people when we know that that's what the workforce looks like? And yes, that's problematic and we need to change what the workforce is, and that's another conversation. But if I know that like next year there's gonna be like 500 new like white female school counselors who have no idea what hip hop is going into schools to work with young people, specifically Black and Latinx young people, then I gotta work with them. Like, and I gotta figure out how to do it. So I've been sitting in that a lot, and I don't want to monopolize, so I'll quiet down. But that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Thank you so much. I think if anything, that I without a doubt, hopefully inspires a lot of people. Because I think one thing that I know for sure that I hope that this particular moment is making possible as we log out. This is me like bringing us down to a close, because I realize we are 7 minutes over time, but it's okay. So I love y'all. Is I just think so much in this particular moment. I think that, Ian, what you just hit on is like hip hop. This is a moment we are allowed, I think, to ask these kinds of questions and to engage in discovering answers to these questions. Like I think that this particular moment has, I don't know, somehow empowered a set of ways of thinking for us that are having us. The fact that this is the fact that you got school counselors now studying hip hop. I'm like, like I think so much about where we are and where hip hop is heading. I get so excited, but like this moment, I think allows for more questions. And I'm someone who celebrates inquiry and discovery and imagination and creativity. And so I encourage everybody who's logged in, Google these folks, right? See the work that you might decide that, maybe you want to be in pursuit of a PhD and they're doing work, whatever the thing, or maybe not even PhD, but if you want to work in higher ed, that's what it is. Please know that there is a hip hop space for you, is what I mean. I'm just going to leave it. There's a hip hop space for you. Yeah, and then I've got one last little thing.
Can we pull up to the contact slide, the last PowerPoint slide? I think it has your contact info and the hashtag.
Yeah, it is. I'm about to go to. There's one last little thing, and I just want. Yeah, it's right there. It is. Got it. And so y'all, the work still continues, right? So I still got more data to weed through. My dope friends who were able to join tonight, thank y'all. Higher Ed Emcees, I appreciate you being the inaugural squad. Thank you for taking that crazy journey with me and Crystal, as always, for being my sidekick. Lauren Alicia is not going to show herself, but my dope assistant is behind the scenes, making sure nothing goes wrong, because nothing has. And then also, thank you again, Anacostia Art Center. Thank you, DC Commission with Arts Humanities. Thank you, Humanities DC. This work, there's more, y'all. This is to be continued. I appreciate this moment, and I'm gonna shut up unless there's another way somebody else wants to close out with a thing. Solid. At TonyKeithJr.com, hashtag at Emcees, and then if you just want to know the name of my dope, amazing friends, here they are, and I'm gonna leave that screen up, and so y'all can Google these people. So that, y'all, is like the way I'm just going to end this event. If it was in person, I'd end it with another poem, but I don't think that I have time to. So
thank you so much, everybody. Stay tuned for the recording.
Yes, we will post the recording.
More to come. More to come soon. Thank you so much. I'm safe in chat right now. Sending y'all lots of love and light tonight. Y'all stay warm and stay healthy, okay?
I can't wait to see this chat. Peace, y'all. I can't wait to see this chat. I can't wait to see.
Take care, y'all.
All right, peace, y'all. Thank y'all again. Peace, peace, peace.
Good night. Good night.
Yes. Dr. E, I'll ring you after this joint or something. Okay.
Sound good, baby.
All right. Lauren, how do I log out? What I got to do?